Great to see you. Are you in the vineyard right now? Are you?
We are indeed in the vineyard. This is the view. And this is the
Oh,
bottle. It's empty bottle right now, but we have plenty more if you need.
lovely stuff. Well, we're looking forward to giving you some commercial vision to bring to life. So welcome everybody, welcome everyone. Whilst we're just waiting for a few people to dial in, I wondered if you might just be able to drop into the chat. What sparked your interest to join us today? Just drop that into the chat. Be fascinating to know what sparked your interest. Engage you, draw you in at the same time. Turn that off. I'll leave that as a little note for people as they dial in. Great stuff. So we've got France, we've got Italy, Enzo in Italy there dialed in. Peter, what part of the world are you in, Mr. Faisal?
Dorset. Deepest, darkest Dorset.
Completely international there. Lovely stuff. Welcome in everybody. Welcome to Uspire, Discover Uspire, where today we are going to be looking at helping you build out your commercial vision. I've put on the screen behind me actually 3 elements to that really. How do you define, design and deliver that? We're going to give you a few tools, tips and techniques in order to do that as the first of 5 Discover sessions. Over the next 5 months, we will be introducing you to different topics, and the next one starts October the 10th with Amanda doing What's Your Sales Story. So a little plug right at the beginning there, Amanda, for the next Discover session coming up. And you'll discover why that's the next logical step as we go through that. So what I'm planning to do today is therefore then take you through vision versus mission, vision versus a commercial vision, and then introduce you to what I've called a vortex model to get you thinking about developing and designing your commercial vision for your business, but equally you might choose to do it just for yourself as a leader. Waving at you through cyberspace is our guest star today. Greg, give us a wave so people's eyes are drawn to you. Greg, could you just in 30 seconds or so just give us a top line introduction to you and your background, please?
Yeah, thanks, Chester. Great to see you all today. So I started life as a medical rep, out in the car seeing doctors and nurses, then kind of moved into FMCG, so 3 years with Lucozade and Ribena, GSK, and then 11 with Danone, where I first came into contact with Uspire, and just maybe they made me the man I am today, who knows. And then I spent a bit of time in a startup yogurt business, which was really exciting, learned a huge amount. Probably decided that the focus for me was a bit on the balance of getting people and profit right, as opposed to profit, which seems to be a bit more of a focus in private equity, as some of you may have experienced. And I've been at Mars for the last 4 years working on the Royal Canin brand. So firstly within our retail business, and I moved across to our pet professional business, which is what we cite as vets and breeders, mainly focusing on therapeutic diets for the last 6 months.
Lovely stuff. Thanks, Greg. Short and concise and sweet. Thank you very much. I'm just looking up and down the chat there as to what has sparked people's interest today. And I noticed we've been joined by an AI assistant. That's my first ever. We've got an AI assistant here taking notes for somebody whilst they multitask. There we go. So hopefully, Christian, your name comes up in blaring headlights as you relook and revisit your AI assistant notes. A lesson for us all, maybe. We can all dial out and just let Chester talk at the computer. Great stuff. So it looks like we've got different people from different backgrounds looking for different pieces of insight. What we're going to provide to you today is some intellectual thinking to allow you to go off and think about, do I need to define my category? Do I need to design the strategy? Or actually, is the challenge delivering the commercial vision I've already brought onto paper? So let's just think about the 2 words that we quite regularly hear and maybe get a little bit of confusion. Is the words mission and vision. And I'm going to ask Chris just to drop something into the chat in due course. Vision is about the destination that we are aiming to get to. What are we aiming to do? Whereas mission is about the journey that we're on to get to that vision, and it's why we're here right now. So you can start to think about that. Chris, if you could just drop that into chat. I've got something that's really interesting because it talks about both the purpose-led elements, but strategy then follows your purpose, and then execution of your strategy follows in that. So hopefully in the chat, you'll see two little JPEGs that get dropped in there. Chris, you can let us know when they're in there. That'd be great. And I've given an example of a vision versus a mission for your Spire. Our vision is to create the finest commercial leaders in the world. We hope you are those finest commercial leaders with us today. Our mission is therefore then about provoking and energizing people so that they can transform their own business. That's our mission. That's how we bring our vision to life. Hopefully those are in there. Give us a quick nod or a shout there, Chris, if they are. I can just see them uploading. Perfect. If you want to, you can download those, or you can just click and open them to view them in due course. So we've given you a version of our vision and mission. And equally, what I like about the other one is you may be coaching, you might be mentoring some other individuals in your business, and it just helps you define what the differences are between vision, mission, values, commercial strategy, for example. So I'll let you get into enjoying that should you choose. Okay, let's therefore then look at vision versus a commercial vision. Anybody hazard the guess between the two? Maybe I might ask Alison and put you on the spot because I know you're quite an in the moment person, and I might come to Rebecca as well. What's the difference, do you think, Alison, between a vision and a commercial vision? Any ideas? Come off mute, Alison. Come off mute, Rebecca.
There we go.
And Matthew Hearn can back us up just in case. What do you think?
So I'd say a vision is kind of more of an umbrella view of where you might want to get to as kind of a cross-functional team, and a commercial vision being a strand that feeds into that.
Lovely stuff. Great. Rebecca, please build off Alison, and then Matthew, if you've got others, then please add to that.
Sure. So as Alison said, the vision is more of an overview and kind of having still a very clear idea where you want to head to and what you want to provide back relevant of your business. And the commercial vision, which would be more drilled down into, perhaps I would interpret it as targets or more the numerical aspect, profit, margin, turnover.
Absolutely, the financial element. Great stuff. Have you got any builds there, Matthew? He's looking for how to come off mute. Oh, he's come off mute, but Matthew, we can't hear you for some bizarre reason. That's a bit strange, isn't it? So we might just pivot through. So has anybody got any other builds? Matthew, we just couldn't hear. We could see you were talking. So you might just need to leave and come back in, and it might reset the microphone for you. Any other builds from the rest of the group? Just wave a hand if you've got other builds. And I can see nobody waving. So there we go. Let me just spotlight myself for everybody. So what we talk about is vision, or is it purpose-led? Purpose-led. It might be about your culture, your social impact. It might be about the growth that we expect to see. The commercial vision is your financial, but also your marketing, your market orientation. How will we succeed in the marketplace, for example? It might be about revenue, but it equally might be about share. It might be about customer acquisition or retention. It's what you're doing within the marketplace that allows you to think about what your financial goals and metrics might be. Both of which are around and orientated towards what you might call your North Star. How do you orientate your decision making? That's the real purpose behind having a vision. Is about enabling you to make the right decisions by going back to your point of destination. Where are we going to? So vision versus commercial vision finance market orientation. Now, I've got a little model that I'm going to bring to life for you in a second. And in order to do that, I'm going to share a screen. We don't do too much PowerPoint in Uspire, but it will also then allow me to share 2 short videos of somebody talking about foresight. So let me just bring up this in terms of, this is what I call the commercial vortex. And I'm going to ask somebody just to wave a hand so that you can let me know that you can see that. Wave a hand to let, actually, Mark,
Yes.
Francis, you can see that I've lost everybody's visuals, so I might need, if anyone's waving a hand or something, just let me know.
We're all good. We can see it, Chester.
Wonderful stuff. So define, design, deliver. You've got the 3 elements color coordinated within that. We're looking at future insight. Foresight is both based on historic trends about where we may have been and looking at trends and analysis about where we're going in the future. It helps us understand what's going on. Helps us undefine maybe the category that we orientate with ourselves in, the breadth of our business, and it gets us to really therefore think about what is the vision that we are on for our particular business, or me as an individual, if you're thinking about writing your own commercial vision. When we start then moving into the design element, there's actually then a structure. What's the purpose that we are out there? What are our commercial KPIs, our goals, our market penetration, maybe our customer retention? Before we then think about stakeholder management, how do we align ourselves? And a classic example here might be a client that we've just been talking to where they've had a vision to 2025. They're rewriting that vision to 2028, and it's going to require them to go through a journey of transformation. So before they develop the strategies that sit below that vision, they need to get their stakeholders to buy into that. And for them, it's the city investors, it's about the board, and they've got a parental company that sits above their own company. It may well mean some disposal of some of their business, and it also may well mean that for them, they might see a slight sales and revenue dip as they come through that change curve they need to go through. They need to get alignment before they go into the weighty element of developing the strategy, the processes, the structures, the roles that sit beneath it, before they then empower their team, their people, their beliefs, their desires through the right rewards recognition, the right explicit remit, before the final piece is the rubber hits the road and we start thinking about then the delivery of that. The delivery element in terms of the internal comms, the external comms to your customer base, thinking about the capabilities, skills and competencies we might need to deliver, and then getting on with it, actually making sure we do what we said we're going to promise. So that gives you a little bit of what I call this vortex model. And the key for showing you the 2 circles is the outside loop is the thinking loop. The inside loop is the doing loop, but both need to go on concurrently. And I'm going to ask Greg, after I've shown the 2 videos, just to talk about how do you do that in practice, because business as usual will quite often distract that longer term thinking. So let's just look at this foresight element. Let's just look at going into foresight and understanding. I'm going to share 2 quick YouTube clips, one from our Manchester Live event, where we've got David Smith talking, and the second is going to be then him talking a little bit more depth. So let's just start with David. He's going to introduce a quote from JFK. Just let me know that you can hear the sound, Mark.
Love his things, quotations, and I'll
Yes.
you. And this one's from Kennedy. He says basically, there's change all around us, and if you only look at the present and the past, which is what a lot of people do, looking at their quarters, months, performance, and what we're doing now, and the pressures and the expediency, the important things we need to embrace. But occasionally we need to look forward. We need to look at the future about what's coming, and that's what we're going to spend a bit of time doing. I mean, you could argue that the amount of change is enormous, and it feels like it's accelerating, but it broadly breaks down into how the world's working and how it operates is changing. Demography, who we are and where we are and how old we are and what we think about is changing. Tech in every aspect. the nature of work and who is working and how we're working is changing a great deal, isn't it? And then, of course, energy, technology, transport, consumption, what we want to buy. Do we want to buy things in the same old way? We're changing our minds about that. And of course, then there's the environment and everything to do with that. So there's a massive wave of things that are all shifting at the same time. That make sense?
Great stuff. So if you want to find out more about that, we'll share in the link all of the information that David shared in terms of the tsunami of change that he talks about coming. What I want to pivot onto, though, is that first bit, the foresight piece, the future insight, and how this may well then help shape your thinking as that first phase around defining, designing your commercial strategy. So let's just hear David again. This will be about 90 seconds to 2 minutes of video. So here we go again.
Foresight's impact strategy literally all the time. The one thing strategy lives off is what does the future look like and what is the environment in which we will be projecting our products or services. So we need to understand what the drivers are of what that landscape will look like. And in many ways, our vision should be an encapsulation of where we're heading, but it should be informed by the foresight we've gathered. So if that foresight changes in any shape or form, which it always does, then we adapt our vision. So vision is something that's often very long worked at and handcrafted, and we want to breathe a sigh of relief and leave it there, but actually it should be informed by a clear set of drivers that are the foresight that we've gathered from various sources. And it's our belief. The bottom line is it's our belief of the drivers and their importance versus, if you like, our competitors. And that's what often will drive success. Planning in any organization is fundamental and important, but foresight tells us what we're planning for. Somebody once said you can survive for a very long time by literally putting one foot in front of the other, but eventually you fall off a cliff. So the whole nature of planning is we don't plan to have a project looking at the future. We have a project looking at the future and we plan accordingly. So the whole point is they are symbiotic in terms of where you're going to is what you need to look at to decide where you're going, but planning should follow that vision and foresight piece up front. So planning is vital because I'm a great believer that actually having a vision of what the future looks like is utterly pointless unless you're actually going to do something about it. And that's where the rubber hits the road. The important thing is that we take a view of it, we take the drivers and understand them, and we make adaptation as a consequence.
I'm going to pause there just to hear some reflections before I pivot through to Greg. Just in terms of reflections from people that have been listening to that, I might come through cyberspace. Pierre Dio, I'm not sure if I've said your name correctly. You've dropped in the chat, you've got multiple strategies going on, and therefore, what did you connect with in those two videos?
I was actually, it's Priya, by the way, like
Priya,
Maria with a P. Yeah, I was actually trying to write a vision statement today, and it's actually quite complicated, and that does help with the foresight aspect because the vision's got to encapsulate what we're doing as a business, but it's also got to include what we're doing as a team in order to achieve the business vision. So it was trying to balance both, and it was actually an AI strategy that I'm writing. So within my team, how are we going to be using AI, which is probably the goals or the mission, but the overall vision of the organization and what we want to achieve on that larger level. So I found it actually quite a difficult exercise, and this training's come at the right time. But yeah, does a vision statement have to be a short paragraph or statement that includes everything that you want to try and achieve? And I found that that was the hardest thing.
And I think what you heard from David in that video there was that actually it just needs to live and breathe, but be adapted. And what we tend to find lots of organizations do is they spend ages wordsmithing a single vision statement, and actually it's getting on with stuff and allowing it to adapt and change and to develop depending on the input that you've got there, particularly where they are, where you actually don't know all the answers, for example.
Precisely, yeah, that's right.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for being put on the spot. Greg, I might turn the cyberspace microphone to you just in terms of leadership. you can see that through that vortex that we've dropped into chat, that there's a huge amount of thinking and planning and potential resource that can get soaked up by doing that. How, as a leader, do you actually lead your business at the same time as creating a vision? Give us some of your pearls of wisdom.
Thank you, Chester. Yeah, so I'm not going to try and define leadership in 2 minutes, because I'm sure you've got multiple webinars you could have on that. I try and boil it down to 2 areas. So firstly, my job is to create the best possible environment for the team that I lead to thrive. The second element of it is, how do I set direction? How do I socialize a plan? How do I govern that plan? And then how do we course correct when it goes off course, which naturally it does. Not everything is perfect and happens all the time. Versus those 2 points, I'm sure all of you are thinking, what about this? What about this? What about this? There are hundreds of operational distractions, and they come thick and fast every day. So in terms of creating time to write a vision, as you said, Priya, there's no one solution, right? What works for you may not work for me. So I go on dog walks, I go to the gym, I sit there on like weights machines and go, oh, that's a good idea, and I'll write things down. I go and sit in coffee shops. And when I've talked to friends or talked to other colleagues, the only consistent element I would say is it has to be away from your desk, and it has to be planned time where you're really taking the moment to think and also be curious. Lost you sound-wise, Chester.
Thanks, Greg. You would have thought after these years of delivering online, you didn't need a mute button. I'm going to open it up to other people. Thoughts and reflections in terms of leading your teams and building vision at the same time. I might come through cyberspace to a man like Colin, who's helped other businesses do that, but I'm going to open it up to anybody else beforehand. You might have a question to ask rather than a point of view to share. Just looking through cyberspace to people like Clarissa or Natalie who have got their cameras on, or James as well. Your choice entirely. Any thoughts or builds or expertise?
I've got a question for Greg, if that's okay. It's James.
Hi, James.
Hi, Greg. Good to see you again. So when you're creating that time, that thinking time, which is fully recommended, how do you make sure that you almost like set the agenda in your head for what you want to percolate through, and that you don't then get distractive thoughts kind of dropping in at 100 miles an hour?
Yeah, it's a good question, James. I think the 2 things I do, and one of them was a training session I actually went on last year, where I was challenged on how do you spend your time. And I actually went through my diary for the last month, and I started doing a pie chart of this is where I spend the time. And just the general distraction was incredibly high. So I then gone to the point of really being much more specific in my diary to say, these are the points that I'm available to speak to other people. These are the points when I'm not available and I'm going to be thinking and doing. So the first thing is actually you create the space in the diary to be available and connect, and then the time to really think and things as well. The other element of that I'd say is I turn everything off and I separate out completely. So I don't have my work phone on. I don't have my iPad in front of me. I don't have my laptop. I'm a bit old school. I've got multicolored pens and A3 sheets, and I sit there and scribble and draw. And then it's very yellow energy view. You then roll back in and try and make some sense of it. But I think, yeah, the top tips I'd say is create that time, remove all the electric or the electronic distractions, and do what works for you. You know, if what works for me is drawing, and I do that to kind of like play around those different thoughts.
Thanks, Greg.
Great builds, thank you. Other questions, or I might ask Colin in terms of helping other organisations define the vision beyond just the time and space. I can see some chat going in from Lucy. Thank you for sharing that. Colin.
Hi, Chester.
Hello. I just need a build.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I always ask management teams to focus on is a vision for growth. You know, because without a vision for growth, which is what we're talking about here, which is actually having the right sort of commercial thought process around your markets, your customers, the service that you operate, it's the most fundamental thing. And too many organisations get trapped in chasing short-term profitability. And you'll find that you also have an influence, no offense to accountants in the room, an influence from accountants that actually start to focus on how can we cut costs, how can we actually shrink the organisation. And no monuments have ever been erected to anybody that's actually shrunk a company. It's mostly about people that actually grow and develop sort of successful enterprises. So the only way to really create a sustainable organisation is to have a proper vision for growth. Yeah. And therefore don't allow the distractions of the day-to-day issues that you might face, because you'll always get disruption when you're out there in the marketplace, but never lose sight of actually those fundamental principles that where you're trying to grow the organisation.
Lovely stuff. Thank you, Colin. Much appreciated for your knowledge and expertise. So you talked about the kind of the value there a little bit, Colin, and I think that's probably where we need to go next in terms of that design wheel. So I'm conscious that the vortex was something that I put up in front of you just briefly, so just place it back in terms of moving into the design. Where do we start to therefore then create value? And how do we then take it from a design process forward? And that's what I wanted to spend the latter part of the time online together. We've looked at this in terms of foresight and understanding. Let's look at design, align, and communicate as the final pieces. If you've joined other webinars, you will have done the brand key in terms of what's our why, what's our brand essence, and how's it built on. So we can share links to the other content so you understand more about your proposition. But equally, there's the brands and services, or the products and services wheel that sits along that. And this is about truly understanding what your value proposition really is. Why you? Now, that might be from an individual perspective if you're trying to create your own commercial vision, but equally looking at an organizational commercial vision, it's about thinking about what is it that we actually stand for? What is it that we make? Looking from our customer's perspective and looking back at the what, does it actually mirror the intent? So if I drill into the products and services wheel, it's wordy, but I think it's a useful slide to share. If you asked your customer, what are your products and services? Does what you intend them to say mirror what they actually tell you? And from your commercial vision, you should be looking at that feedback loop to say, does our impact meet our intention? Are they hand in glove, or is there a mismatch? Because we need to be listening to customers to understand what it is they think we do, and then how do we attract and make awareness of our products and services to possibly new customers or new products and services within our existing customer base. So that idea of potentially upselling and cross-selling based on, can people find what it is that we do? Is it easy for them to understand what they get from us in terms of linking back to our what? Do they really understand what they get? And does our moment of truth match the moment of interest that they start out with? Setup is all about onboarding. If you take on a new customer or you sell them a new product or service, how easy is it for you to onboard them with the new tool or new technique? Can they use it? Can your customers use it themselves, or do you need to help them use it by thinking about what your customer service proposition is? And I know Greg will talk about the value proposition from a Royal Canin perspective in a moment. In terms of the simplicity of payment and how easy is it for them to leave whatever it is you're seeking to do. If you took the recruitment industry, for an example, you only get placed every now and again, and therefore it might be as a recruitment, they want you to refer you on to other people because they know that you dip into their services and products and then may only come back to that 2 or 3 years down the line. So how is it that they create the recommendation model so that it's as frictionless a process as possible? So this is what we talk about as our products and services wheel, and we help companies go into deeper dives around this. But I'm going to stop sharing and pivot back to Greg so that he can just talk a little bit more about how he's zoned in on the value proposition. Greg, I'm going to come to you and stop sharing.
Yeah, thanks, Chester. So I suppose my experience is every single team I've worked in, there are always multiple opinions. And again, there's no single version of the truth. And what's quite interesting is actually when you sit down with people and go, what do we do? What are we great at? What is our single position? Even if you work with someone for 10 years in the same business, you can actually have a different opinion, which is amazing. Also, you'll get different senior leaders who will come into business and they'll have their view, which they'll then obviously, I'm sure, assertively place within the business, and you'll have to align and change and follow that at times as well. So the tool Chester's shared is a great tool. Other tools are available, but it's really useful to just ask yourself those questions. So what I'd suggest doing is, get a diverse group of leaders and people around you, and maybe some outside inspiration as well, and discuss and challenge the areas that's outlined in Chester's tool, and then align but not agree. So I think the key point there is you're going to all have different opinions, and some people will move, some people won't. You don't have to agree on everything that you put in that page, but you need to align on a single voice of one when you come out of that session on how you're going to then disseminate those plans and that detail to the rest of your business and your customers. And I suppose to point Chester's point on an example we have within my current role, when I first started, I went out with lots of our vet business managers into clinics and listened to the way they talked, and everything was very different, and they've all come different experiences and they sell in different ways, which is absolutely fine. But the key thing that Royal Canin's good at, or great at, if I take Pippa's point, is we lead with science to create the best diets possible for cats and dogs to improve their health. And at no point did we have any science reference in anything that we were doing on all those different areas and all those different calls. We're not citing anything that's been published. We're not citing any of the studies we're doing. We're not citing that we're the most tested and reviewed brand on the entire market. So that's the shift we're going to make, is we're going to start leading with science, really focusing on what we're great at, to again speak to scientists like vets, like nurses, like pharmaceutical companies do with them. So they'll be used to this way of communicating, and that should hopefully bring us some greater success in years to come.
So thanks, Greg. And in terms of therefore that you talked about aligning, once you've therefore then got people aligned, you've had a think about what is it that we're not doing in the marketplace where we can maybe just pivot an existing business towards a clearer sense of a future commercial vision. How do you go about then taking people on that journey, Greg? How do you start to inspire people that what you've decided as your leadership team is the right course of action?
Absolutely. Okay, so I think simplistically, I'll call it co-creating small and big. So co-creating small is doing exactly what we just said. You get a few thought partners together, and you get to, I think, probably a 70 to 80% idea around a solution and a plan on where you want to go. What I've mainly found around getting stakeholders on board and making sure you can progress within a business is to have some element of co-creation, so everyone feels like they've had the chance to put their 2 pence worth in, if you like, and they've got their points out that you want to make. So if you get those key thought partners into a 70 to 80% level, I think you can then co-create with a larger cross-functional team, but you already know the majority of the information you want, but you've got the chance for senior stakeholders to build, or someone from a different department, maybe even accountant Colin, who could come in and build and kind of reference a few points that you want to consider that you may be forgotten about as well. The third area I'd then say is then the show, if you like. So you do a big fanfare, a big socialized plan, and that could be to customers, so like brand plans or something. That could be internally, where you almost shut down the business for a couple of hours and you share whatever this department's doing. And then finally, it's about thinking about the comms and the cadence and the key milestones. How are you celebrating those wins? How are you updating everyone on the strategy so people are clear on what's going on and things as well? And then it remains consistent in people's lives and people's workplace, just so you're clearly reiterating those messages and everyone's clear on what you're working on and what you're delivering.
Great stuff. I'm going to pause there for questions based on what you heard coming out of Greg's mouth. In terms of any thoughts, people like Paul, people like Lucy, Peter, any thoughts? Andrew Hollyburn, any thoughts or questions? Lucy.
Just picking up on Greg's point about actually, you can work with people for years and have different opinions. And I just think that's so important in businesses. If everybody is vehemently agreeing, probability is that you're not stretching yourself far enough. And actually, it's really important. I put in the chat around that healthy friction to really push yourself onto the next level in there. I think that's so important.
So we're being too comfortable in terms of we're not really challenging ourselves like that. Thank you, Lucy. Other questions, Paul, and then to Mark Francis.
Yeah, Chester, just interested to understand, obviously, going back to the videos, that forward-looking strategy is, is well understood. How far out would people say you should set your vision so that you're not overreaching? What's a realistic timeline to set? In our business, we work to 3-year plans. Just wondered what everyone's view of that was.
All right. Well, I'll come via Greg to start with, and then I might ask a few other people to build.
Yeah, I think 3 is a very common number, Paul. Right? I think people regularly will see that and that will resonate. I think it depends a little bit what sort of business you're in. So how long does it take you to bring whatever your product is to market? How long does it take you to move things forward? If you've got a 3-year vision, 5 or a 10-year vision, I think those are all okay if they're suitable for your business. But again, it's about the agility. So, if you have a 5-year vision, you stick to it, and then COVID hits in year 2, you're going to have to adapt, right? So, and then as we're coming out of COVID, the world's changing. I'm sure 5 years ago, we wouldn't all be expecting to be sitting here doing this over Zoom. We'd have been meeting in London or a different city somewhere. So I think for me, there's no set number. I would probably err on the side of not being too long, because you need to be bringing in new thoughts. As Lucy said, if you get too stuck in, well, this is our 10-year plan and we're not going to shift from that, you maybe get a bit comfortable, or you maybe don't stretch some of the boundaries.
Thank you. Any other thoughts on the number 3? Is 3 the magic number? Or do people have others? Lucy, I'll let you build, and Andrew, I saw a hand twitch, and Peter as well.
Yeah, I think totally echo what Greg said. I think there's 3 is kind of a good number where you can create an action plan around that. And so people can see realistic sort of change. But I think, again, it depends on what you're trying to achieve. If you're trying to change consumer behavior, that takes a really long time to do. So sometimes it's about having a vision that is very stretching and might be over that 10-year time, but actually your action planning being around that sort of 2-3 year and having the ability to adapt as well.
Thanks, Lucy. Andrew, I'll let you build, and then Peter. Mark, I'm going to come back to you as another question. Is 3 the magic number for you, Andrew?
I think I was getting myself slightly muddled up with vision versus commercial vision, because I was thinking if you've got the right vision, then that doesn't change, but your strategies for getting there will. But I've always worked on detail in 1 year, a vision of 3 years, and then some thought beyond that. But it's about the flexibility, I think, as everyone said, and whether you're creating the vision and the flexibility to have other people's opinions coming in, or you've created the vision and the flexibility to adapt it and change it depending on market conditions or whatever's coming at you. So I think that flexibility element is critical.
Takes it back to your market orientation, doesn't it? Which is why Greg's saying it depends on your business. If your market orientation is moving at a pace that's quicker than that, you may have to pivot faster than you might normally like. Peter, your thoughts, and then Mark, question from you.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about businesses, probably we've all worked in, there's either a vision or a mission statement. You never discuss it at certain levels. It's up in reception, and that's it. it's not lived. And I think some of the things we're talking about here is showing that it needs to be lived and changed and adapt. And I think that, you know, again, that vision could be a 10-year vision, but actually the commercial vision will adapt as it goes through, and it will depend on whether, you know, the marketing vision, as Lucy's just said, may have to be 5 to 7 years out, because that's how long it's going to take to change consumers. In the commercial area, how often do you sit with account managers or commercial people who do an annual plan? It's as though, you know, the world starts in January and finishes in December, and they think about the following year, and you say, no, write a 3-year plan for your customer, because, you know, that customer is going to continue. Yes, it will change, but I think we need to get this together and get it, you know, broken down into areas that then link it up where everybody's involved, and it becomes challenging because day to day gets in the way.
Great build, Peter. We work with a large sandwich manufacturer that noticed bizarrely that sushi was on the rise, and for the ability to put sushi into the convenience marketplace like your Tesco Express or your On the Go required a brand new production line, and that took capex, and therefore it required a 3-year trading deal to make sure that the investment was there to return on investment. So all of a sudden the commercial vision is 3 to 5 years rather than your annual trading plan.
Yeah.
And that's where the agreement was built around as well.
Well, and that's where the smart commercial teams have that vision and chase it to looking for long-term agreements, as opposed to my next promotion plan, which is, you know, drives us all mad.
I think those are the words of Neil Rackman, the negotiation expert. Spend more time looking at longer opportunities. Mark, you've been very patient there, which is amazing. For
someone with yellow energy, right? I'm going to share with you a real-time example of everything we've been talking about. As it happens, we had at the beginning of this call 2 entrepreneurs who bought a vineyard 4 years ago. One of the brothers is a high yellow energy, big ideas, clear vision, which I'm going to share with you. And the other brother is a very logical, structured, analytical blue energy. And brother yellow, I'm going to call him. Oh, by the way, Chester says, can Chester come and help me do my brand key? So I think I might have won you some business. He said, here's the vision for our brand, and it's a rosé brand. Here's the vision. Notice how long-term and maybe even forever this vision is, to your point, Andrew. A rosy experience globally for 20-somethings. Now, very yellow, right? What exactly does that mean? And it's not a wine-based vision. It's more around the consumer experience, right? So, okay, not very tangible. So the other brother says, well, wait a minute. I think our vision is a sustainable business driving double-digit growth from vintage 2026. And I think that plays beautifully to this friction that Lucy talked about, where the 2 founders really have a different perspective, but they both can marry. Because one, for me, is a vision around consumer experience, and the other one is around a commercial vision that says we need to have profit within 2 years and then sustainably. So I think that what I learned from Greg is about how do you align those, and also how do you get the full team to understand what does it mean for me on a day-to-day basis if I'm the vineyard manager. So I just wanted to share that because that's very real. That's come from this discussion. They're texting me because they're saying they can't stay online because of contact issues, but they're saying they're learning as they're going. I wanted to share that.
Great, thank you, Mark. So it comes into that socialization and the communication piece that Greg talked about. The design piece, getting a small team on it, aligning with the larger organization, and then a big event, socializing it, launching it, communicating it internally and externally, and then that consistency of communication allows you to then start being on the inner circle of that vortex, the delivery, the rubber hitting the road, which was the expression you heard from David Smith's video. Greg, just conscious of people's time and yours as well, in terms of other builds, in terms of any other angles or builds that you feel would be really valuable to share with people on this particular area of building a commercial vision?
Yeah, I'll stick with 3 being the magic number. So first things first, I'd say is about simplicity. So can you communicate it on one page? Are you using language that your nan would understand, rather than having to make sure that you have to have some sort of degree in corporate communications to get your head around?
Right, Greg, that's grandmother to international.
So yeah, grandmother,
people,
international people. Yeah, sorry, international. Yeah. So I think it's really about how do you make sure it's simple, right? That's the first thing. And as we liked quotes from Kennedy to start off with, Da Vinci's was simple as the ultimate sophistication, which I've always been a fan of. The second thing is repetition. So what I've found when I've written visions and strategies and things is you are deep in it yourself and you understand it really, really well. A common error, if you like, I've seen happen is it's been communicated once and then the communicator is then frustrated that no one understands it or it's not been followed regularly. You've got to repeat it regularly. And you've got to make sure that it's in lots of different areas of the office, or it's on a backdrop like Mark's got there, or it's referenced in everything that you do, so people can get used to it and it becomes part of the vernacular. The third thing I'd say is use it in your business both internally and externally. So I'll give you a live example. We were having some challenge. Mars's vision is to build a better world for pets. And we were having some challenging conversations with a customer recently who was unsurprisingly focused on dropping the price of the product and to try and sell more. It's a unique retail strategy. My challenge back to them was, how is this building a better world for pets? How does this link with my commercial vision to achieve your price goal? And we went round and round and round, and it basically, you get to the old thing where like his point was, I'm trying to steal share and I'm trying to do this, and I said, well, I'm trying to build a better world for pets, therefore we're not going to support you because this doesn't meet my vision. And it's an interesting option to potentially try for your negotiations as well, because it seemed to resonate in that example. I wouldn't use it all the time, but it seemed to resonate in that example to get through, to find some way through in a difficult conversation.
Great, that's super useful. It comes back to that idea that your vision is there to help you navigate those tough discussions, that North Star in terms of just what is the decision? Well, does it help us get to our aim? I think the Olympic rowers, the British Olympic rowers would talk about, does it help make the boat go faster so that we can get to our end goal? Great stuff. So hopefully through the last 50 minutes, you've got some top tips in terms of how to think about structuring it. We've given you a tool and a technique, a vortex model to get you thinking about defining, designing, delivering. Of course, what you've heard from Greg is this idea of simplicity, repetition, and then onward communication, a cascade of communication. And what you really need for that is a story. You need to think about what your story is, because we know that stories travel. A well-crafted story goes well beyond your sphere of influence, and you start inspiring others that you may not, as the leader, be talking to. So October 10th is the next session, and Amanda's going to be leading that, thinking about how do you then start selling and influencing your peers, your colleagues, the people that work for you, your wider internal communication network, and also your external stakeholders as well. So hopefully you'll have time to put that in your diary. 50 minutes well spent. Thank you for dialing in for this one. If you would like to ask any questions of Greg, please feel free to stay online. Otherwise, we look forward to seeing you later next month. I hope you've enjoyed this little bit of provocation as we seek to create the finest commercial leaders in the world. Until next time, bye-bye now.